An experienced diver once pointed out that diving isn't something you do, it's something you experience. There's something to that when you consider that underwater, seeing, hearing, moving and breathing differ from what you're used to on land. Let's start with how you see and hear as a diver. Water is more dense than air, and this affects light. Light changes direction slightly when it enters your mask from the water, which causes about a 1/3 magnification. Depending on your perspective, this can make an object look larger, or closer, or both, though with experience, you mentally adjust for this without thinking about it. Water also reflects, scatters, and absorbs light, so the deeper you go, the less light there is. But your eyes are very sensitive. At most popular sites, you have adequate light during the day. Although you may not notice much light loss in clear water during the day, you may notice color loss. Water doesn't absorb light uniformly. It absorbs some colors before others. As you see here, you lose red, followed by yellow, green, and finally blue. Your eyes adjust for the color change, though you may be surprised at how much lost color a dive light reveals. The underwater world isn't silent. You may hear aquatic organisms, boats, divers, and other noises. Sound travels longer distances in water than in air. A boat that's too far away to hear at the surface may sound close underwater. Sound also travels about 4 times faster in water, and that makes it difficult to tell its direction. Usually, something sounds like it's coming from all around or overhead. You may be able to tell relative changes in distance by whether a sound gets louder or fainter. Because water's denser than air, it takes more effort to move through it. The faster you swim, the more energy you use. But what's the rush? Save your energy by moving slowly and steadily, avoiding rapid or jerking movements. Streamlining is part of swimming and moving effectively. You're streamlined when all your gear's secure and nothing dangles, and when you swim relatively level. As you learned in Section 1, trim is your balance in the water, ideally set so your head and feet stay relatively level in a swimming position. If you have too much weight, you add air to your BCD to compensate. This puffs it out, lifts your torso, and lowers your feet, all of which add drag and waste your energy. If you don't have enough weight, your BCD may be empty, but you'll have to kick downward to stay at depth. This puts your feet too high. You can also be weighted correctly, but have it distributed too low or too high on your body. During your training dives, your instructor will help you master correct weighting and trim. The right weight and trim make water's density work for you. As you dive, you stay neutrally buoyant, almost weightless, gliding through the underwater world. At the surface, you inflate your BCD so you float effortlessly. It's your ability to change your buoyancy that makes diving a unique experience. Normally, you'll end the dive when you're too cool for comfort, but be aware that water absorbs heat about 20 times faster than air does, so even water as warm as 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, can chill you after a while. To stay comfortable, you wear an exposure suit. A full wetsuit like this for moderately cool to moderately warm water, and a short wetsuit like this for tropical water. Use a dry suit in the coolest water. You'll learn more detail about exposure suits in a bit. Diving's not fun if you're cold, so if you get cold, end the dive and wear more protection the next time. Except in very warm water, even with an exposure suit, you'll still lose heat. The longer the dive, the more protection you wear, but even then, you'll eventually get chilled. Normally, you'll end the dive when you're too cool for comfort, but be aware that uncontrollable shivering is a sign of hypothermia. a serious condition in which your body has lost so much heat that it can be dangerous. If you begin to shiver continuously, exit the water immediately, dry off, and seek warmth. You've already learned that you breathe slowly, deeply, and continuously while diving. This is a more effective way to breathe dense air, and it reduces the effect of dead air space. Dead air space is the air in your breathing passages that doesn't reach your lungs. It's the first part of each inhalation and is higher in waste carbon dioxide. Dive gear adds dead air space. Slow, deep breaths make breathing more efficient because they reduce the proportion of dead air you inhale. It also helps you stay relaxed and clear-headed. Airway control is how you breathe past a little bit of water in the mouthpiece, which is common after clearing. The technique is to inhale slowly while looking downward. Since it's heavier than air, water stays in the mouthpiece as the air flows into your mouth and lungs. Put your tongue tip against the roof of your mouth to help deflect any water. After you get a breath, exhale sharply to clear the residual water. If a few droplets get on your throat, just cough while holding your snorkel or regulator in place. Overexertion usually results from prolonged exertion, like fighting a current, so you can start breathing faster than your regulator can deliver air. It can be frightening and may cause panic. Signs and symptoms include fatigue, labored breathing, feeling suffocated or air-starved, weakness, anxiety, headache, muscle cramping, and a tendency to panic. You help prevent overexertion by breathing slowly and deeply. If your breathing starts to rise, slow down. If you start to feel overexerted, stop all activity, signal your body, and rest. At the surface, make yourself buoyant. Underwater, hang on to something if you can, such as a rock or a dead coral. Wait until your breathing returns to normal before continuing at a slower, proper pace. If conditions make that difficult, abort the dive. Remember that when scuba diving, your breathing goal is to always breathe slowly, deeply, and continuously. As you've learned, you make and plan dives with a buddy. Dive plans don't have to be complex or lengthy, but they help you enjoy the dive more and prepare you to handle problems. Among other points specific to the dive as appropriate, a plan addresses entry and exit points and methods, the course you will follow, the maximum depth and time, a review of signals and communications, when to head back, usually based on your time or air supply, how you will stay together, what to do if separated from your buddy, emergency procedures, and your objective. You kit up together, helping each other as appropriate. Then, right before going in, you conduct the pre-dive safety check with the recall phrase, "Begin with review and friend," or any other phrase for BRAF. Begin, B for BCD. Check adjustment, operation, and partial inflation. Make sure the cylinder band is snug. Check that your surface signaling devices are in place. With, W for weights. Confirm correct weight amount and distribution, and that you can quick release and discard enough to float. Review, R for releases. Make sure all buckles and straps are secured and properly adjusted, and that buddies know how to work each other's releases. And A for air. Test breathe your regulator and alternate air source. Check your SPG to be sure you have enough air for the dive, plus a reserve. Buddies make sure they know where to find each other's alternate air sources. Friend, F for final check. Look each other over for loose straps, trapped hoses, anything out of sorts. Make the pre-dive safety check a habit. It only takes a moment, yet may help prevent close calls and accidents. During the dive, stay with your buddy or buddies. Remember that in clear water, you can be too far apart and yet still see each other. Know what you'll do if you get separated. The general procedure is to look for no more than a minute, then reunite on the surface if you haven't found each other. But in some circumstances, you may need to plan something different. When you have a 3-person team, you follow these procedures if any one buddy gets separated, even though 2 of you are still together. The buddy system works well when divers plan their dives together, pre-dive check together, stay together, and manage their air together. Remember, it's your responsibility to stay with your buddy or buddies. No one can do it for you. Managing your air supply is one of the most important dive skills. You've already learned about using your SPG. Now let's look at how you and your buddies manage your supplies together. People use air at different rates, so one buddy will always use air fastest. Throughout the dive, you and your buddies share air supply information because you turn the dive and head back based on the diver who reaches your planned turn pressure, the pressure at which you head back, first. Suppose you and a buddy dive from a boat with similar cylinders, full at 200 bar or 3000 psi. You agree on a 50 bar or 500 psi reserve. You also agree on 20 bar or 300 psi to cover your ascent and safety stop. Put that with your reserve to get the pressure at which you should be starting your ascent. In this case, you want to start ascending the boat mooring line with at least 70 bar or 800 psi remaining. Take 70 bar or 800 psi from your starting pressure, and that means you have 130 bar or 2200 psi for the dive itself, and you agree to head out until one of you has used half of this, 65 bar or 1100 psi. Then you'll head back using the other half. So, to find your turn pressure, the SPG pressure at which you turn around and head back, subtract 65 bar or 1100 psi from your starting pressure. In this case, your turn pressure is 135 bar or 1900 psi. This gets you back to the mooring line and back on the surface with your reserve. When you plan conservatively, it's common to reach your ascent point with more air than planned. If so, you can often continue the dive in the immediate area, then surface when you reach your ascent pressure. With conservative planning, unexpected delays will still usually let you reach your ascent point within your air supply limits. But if not, ascend as planned where you are and swim the rest of the way on the surface. Do not risk running out of air underwater. A final point. To adjust for differences in air supplies and starting pressures, plan air management based on the smallest supply. At the beginning and end of a dive, you commonly spend time at the surface in water too deep in which to stand. As you've learned, maintain a habit of keeping your mask on and breathing from your snorkel or regulator. Under stress, you tend to do what you do by habit, so these are the habits you want. You may prevent and handle difficulties more effectively when you can see and breathe with your face in the water. You respond much more slowly if you have to put your mask back on. With your mask on and a mouthpiece in place, you're less likely to be blinded or choked a bit by waves. And you're less likely to lose a mask that's on your face. Talk as necessary, but put your mouthpiece back in your mouth afterwards. If you're at the surface more than a few moments at the start of a dive, use your snorkel to save your air for the dive. At the end of a dive with a low cylinder, you may need your snorkel to breathe with your face in the water while swimming or in choppy conditions. When you have to get in the water some distance from where you want to dive, it's common to save air by using your snorkel on the surface to get there. You may snorkel as you look for your descent point from the surface. If you surface away from your exit point due to low air, you may have no choice but to make a surface swim. For short swims, or so you can see underwater, swim face down. But for long swims, it's less tiring on your back because the water supports the cylinder weight, though it's a little harder to navigate and watch where you're going. Maintain the buddy system. Communicate and stay together. Generally, it works well to swim side by side, like this. When you're ready to descend, you follow 5 steps. First, confirm your buddy is ready to descend. Then second, orient yourselves to something at the surface or underwater. Third, switch to your regulator. And fourth, check your computer to be sure it's operational and hasn't gone into sleep mode. Activate your timer if you're using one. Fifth, signal descent and slowly deflate your BCD to start down together. As you start down, begin equalizing immediately and equalize frequently, every meter or few feet, as you learned previously. Descend with your head above your feet, like this, to help your orientation and equalization. You often have a line or slope as a reference. Usually, you use it as a visual reference and control your descent by controlling your buoyancy. But you may hold on to it in some circumstances, like diving in a current. When descending without a reference, stay in a buddy team, adjust your buoyancy, and control your descent by watching your computer. As you descend, your buoyancy decreases and you start to sink faster. This is because increased pressure compresses the gas in your exposure suit and it loses buoyancy. Add air to your BCD to compensate for this, or to your dry suit if you're wearing one. Use small, frequent adjustments for a slow, controlled descent. This helps you equalize every meter or few feet. Ideally, you arrive at the bottom neutrally buoyant by adjusting as you descend. Starting an ascent also has 5 steps. 1. Confirm your buddy is ready to ascend. 2. Check your computer to be sure you're within its limits. 3. Look up and hold your BCD deflator. Do not add air to your BCD. If you're properly weighted and neutrally buoyant, start your ascent by swimming up gently. 4. Ascend slowly, no faster than 18 meters or 60 feet per minute, or your computer's rate, whichever is slower. With most computers, your ascent rate is 10 meters or 30 feet per minute. Look up and turn as you ascend to make sure there's nothing above you. Reach up as you near and break through the surface. Check your computer and control your buoyancy to control your ascent rate. Your buoyancy increases as you ascend because air in your BCD and exposure suit expands. Control your buoyancy by releasing air from your BCD, or dry suit if you're wearing one, in small amounts frequently. When possible, ascend with your buddy or buddies along a reference, like a sloping bottom, mooring line, or a vertical line from a boat or float. Again, you normally use it as a visual reference, though you may ascend holding onto a line in situations like currents. You can ascend in mid-water without a reference by controlling your buoyancy and watching your depth and descent rate on your computer. To navigate while doing this, a common technique is for one buddy to control the ascent while another buddy focuses on navigation. Make a safety stop a normal part of your ascents. It's simply a pause somewhere between 6 meters or 20 feet and 3 meters or 10 feet, usually at 5 meters or 15 feet, for 3 to 5 minutes. Safety stops help you stabilize your ascent and give your body extra time to release dissolved gases. This helps reduce the risk of lung overexpansion injuries and decompression sickness.